Hello and welcome to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It is absolutely beautiful here. We're getting ready to depart for Vail, Colorado. You'll notice that if you're a regular viewer, this is not the Majestic -8 Q400 done up in fake Pan Am colors, but it is done up in American Eagle colors. That's because the flight today is a tribute, in a way, to American Airlines Captain Michael Johnston, who was flying yesterday from Phoenix to Boston when he became ill and died. He was 57 years old. He apparently suffered a heart attack. He leaves behind a wife, 8 children, and 5 grandchildren. All the reporting today says he died doing what he loved, which is probably true. It's a bit of a cliche, and I suppose that as a dedicated professional, he probably would have preferred to have died elsewhere. And as a man with a family like that, who's missing him terribly right now, I'm certain if anything bad were to happen to him, he probably wishes he would have been around family, and I'm sure they wish likewise. My deepest condolences go out to them. And really, I'm doing this because he began his career, Captain Johnston did, at America West Airlines before it got absorbed into U.S. Air and before it merged with American. And he started on a -8, flying for America West, across much of the same territory. So today, even though American doesn't fly -8s and American Eagle doesn't either, and even though America West back in the day, I think, flew -8 100s, not 400s, we're kind of doing this as an homage, if we can, because, it's just nice to recognize somebody who dedicated their life to doing something as nice as getting up in the air and taking people where they want to go. So I'm going to try and do this as much as possible by the book. The flight sort of started as a conversation with a colleague of mine, Brandon, at work, about whether it's feasible to fly an airliner single-handedly. And the fact really is that it is perfectly possible. It's not a death-defying stunt. And in any case, I wouldn't want this to look like this were some sort of stunt. This is just going to try to be our best effort to do the best professional job we can, with the caveat that we are not real pilots and this is not a real plane and all the rest of it. But, we'll do what we can and try and make it a good flight. So here we go. Let's pop inside. Actually, before we do, let's button us up. So we'll close the doors, assume everybody's boarded. And there we go. And we'll play our announcements here. And we'll quickly run through an abbreviated pre-flight flow. I've already done a lot of this so that we don't have to spend a lot of time lingering on the ground. Our main bus tie is tied. Our heats are off. Our lights are off. We'll turn our red anti-collision light on. We will check our landing altitude, which is going to be 500 feet above field altitude, which is 6,500 feet there. And so we'll make that 7,000. We'll check that our APU is on, that our bleeds are off, that our recirc fan is on as needed, that our packs are on auto, that our lights are the way we like them, that our fuel valve is open, our APU is making power. Let's quickly check the power. Our batteries are fine, our DC is fine, our AC is 0 because our engines aren't turning. We'll check our route, and our route looks good. What we'll do real quickly is show you how we're going to go. We are going to get on out of here on the Geyser 4 departure off of runway 1. We're going to make a slight left turn for obstacle avoidance as we're climbing, and then we're going to come back and we're going to intercept the 017 radial out of the Jackson VOR and fly it to Nelsey. Probably what we'll do is somewhere before that we'll get cleared direct to our next waypoint, and that'll save us a little bit of time. Additionally, I've got us on pink needles, which means we're flying off of the FMS or GPS RNAV data, not off of raw VOR. But what I've done is in nav1, if you notice the white needle right here, is I've tuned my nav1 to the Jackson VOR, just so we've got an additional sanity check that we're going to be flying and intercepting the 017 radial. Okay, let's check also that we've got our other 2 VORs in nav2. The first one is Big Piney, and the second one is Rock something or other, which Rock Springs. I'll show you the route we're going to take. We are going to go from Jackson Hole. We'll fly our SID. We will intercept this route. We will fly to Big Piney, which is tuned in. We'll fly outbound from Big Piney to Rock Springs. Thereafter, we'll pick up Jet Airway 206 and we'll take that to the intersection called Nelson. And then we'll fly an approach procedure probably into runway 25, and that's an RNAV GPS approach, which is going to start at Kremling. And you'll notice it threads us through some really heavy-duty terrain, and that's going to be really cool. Double check our field elevation is 6,500, so it's about the same as here. We'll quickly check, see if our nose steering is off. It is. Check to see if our parking brake is on. It is. We'll take a look and see whether our mode selector here is selected right. And it should be on nav. It is. And go around it is. 14,000 is going to be our initial altitude. We're going to hit Alt Cell. That's our magic button. Our V speeds are already calculated. We've got a full load of passengers. We've got a lot of fuel. We've got extra fuel because I think our next leg's going to be back to West Yellowstone. It's not going to be very far. So our flap GPS is set. Take another quick scan. Make sure that our caution lights all light up. They do. Our advisory lights all light up. They do. Anti-ice is off. Yaw damper should come on. Let's just kill our cautions here. Anti-skid is on. Passenger signs are on. And let's button up and go. Okay, doors are closed. In real life, we'd call on the intercom, and we'd probably, if we were pushing onto a taxiway, we'd call ground for clearance to push. Or if it was a busy ramp with some sort of special procedures for that, but there isn't, so we don't. And the way we get a push here is we call our services, and we're going to push back to the right, nose right, and we will start number 2 in a second.
Ground, we are ready for pushback.
Bleeds come off.
We are ready now, please release parking brake.
Parking brake is released.
Parking brakes released.
Pushing back now, you're clear to start the engine number 2.
Okay, so we hit start. Come down here, move that to start feather. We look outside to make sure they're not pushing us into any other planes. Keeping a close eye on our neighbors. And that should do it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our airline, we
Pushback
would like to
complete.
welcome
Please
you
set
on
the
board
parking
of
brake.
our Dash.
Okay, parking brake comes back on.
The flight time today will be approximately 2 hours.
Parking
Would you
brake
please
set.
fasten
Can we
your
get clearance
seatbelts
at
and
number 1?
refrain from smoking? If you want to use any electronic equipment, we would kindly ask you to contact
Control
us
is
first.
free and clear of
For
nose clear.
takeoff and landing,
Clear
these
to start the
devices
engine
must be
number 1.
switched off, and
Have a
the
nice flight.
cellular phones
Okay,
will
we
not
start
be
number
used
1.
during
Do
the
exactly the
entire
same thing.
flight. We wish you a pleasant stay on board.
Now, as we do, we'll monitor our temps and pressures. That's our compressor and turbine. No, I'm sorry, that's our 2 turbines spinning. Number 2 is already up to temp. Pressure's in the green. We're still coming up on 1. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move number 2 to full. And
Ladies
what?
and gentlemen,
Watch it come up.
have your attention to the international safety regulations. This aircraft has 6 emergency exits. 2 exits are located in front, 2 at the wings, and 2 at the back. They are marked with the exit sign. Illuminated escape path markings on the floor lead to these exits.
Okay, number 2 is at ground max. Pressures and temps are fine. Everything's doing fine. Let's move up number 1.
To unfasten the seatbelt, lift the upper part of the balloon. Your life vest is located under your seat.
And that's coming up fine.
When instructed to do so, take
So we will turn on our auto feather, turn on our aux pumps, our standby hydraulic, our power transfer unit. Those all come on. We'll turn our anti-collision lights to white, position lights on, logo lights on, taxi lights on. At this point, we'll cut our heats on. We'll turn our bus tie off. I should have gone from top to bottom on that. Heats on here. We don't need ice protection right now. We can turn off our generator, turn on our bleeds. They'll stay at min for now. We'll turn off our APU. We will very quickly check our voltages. Kill our caution. We will set our takeoff flaps, which is going to be flaps 10 today. Battery's fine, AC is fine. Hydraulics are fine. We'll test our standby system. That is fine. Off it comes. Close that up. We've already set our V-speeds. We've already set our altimeter, but very quickly, let's just check and make sure we're cool on that.
Kilo Juliet Alpha Charlie Airport information Gulf 0153 Zulu weather wind calm visibility 10 sky clear temperature 9 dew point 7 altimeter 3023 advise on initial contact you have information Gulf Kilo Juliet Alpha Charlie Airport information Gulf 0.
Okay, it's a good thing we checked because Golf is now current, but the altimeter is the same. So we're cool there. Before we turn off the nose wheel steering, let's check that our controls are free and clear. Okay. Elevator's fine. Turn that to taxi so we can see. There we go. That's cool. Exercise the rudder. That's cool. All right. That can come on. All right, let's go and taxi out to runway 1. So we're going to go via Alpha here to our right. And check our trim. Our trim is set. Turn that to taxi. Now you see these 1s and 2s here. That means that number 1 and number 2 are in ground range. You're not supposed to taxi a whole lot faster than that. We're going right now at 16 knots on the ground, and I think the maximum is 20 going straight and 15 turning. Anyway, we are coming up on runway number 1. There's the red sign. We're going to line up so we use almost all of it. We're at high altitude. It's not very hot today, but we're very, very heavy. And this is a fairly short strip. So before we go any further, let me just set the parking brake here. Check, make sure that our approach is clear. It is. I'm going to very quickly do a bit of housekeeping here and make sure I've got controls for my ailerons, because yes, I do. Okay. Wanted to make doubly sure that my control surfaces were working before I took to the air. So at this point we will have been cleared onto the runway. We'll move our spoilers to flight. And we'll take the runway. As we do, we will notice that our heading should be 010, give or take a degree or two, and that it should say runway 1, and it does. Okay, we've been told to line up and wait, so we're going to wait for 1 second. We're going to do our final before takeoff check. Taxi lights come off. Approach lights come on. Heats are all on. Altitude is set. Ignition is normal. Bleeds are at min. Props are at max. Let's very, very quickly ring the chimes here. And turn off our gust lock, and I believe we're good to go. So here we go. You know what I forgot to do? Defogger. There we go. So we can see. Alright, so we've got an 80 knot call out, and then we've got V1 at 124, and I'm going to make this an MTOP, or maximum takeoff power takeoff. So here we go. Okay, power is stable. MTOP is set. There we go. It just complains when we sometimes turn a little bit, which is fine. Okay, coming up in 80 knots. There's 80. Coming up on V1. V1, rotate, and feel how sluggish that is. Okay, positive rate. Get into nav mode here. Looking for our acceleration altitude, which is 7550. Coming up really fast. Okay, nose down just slightly. Bring the props back. There we go. Pretty hazy day here. Okay, we're looking for 14,000. And we are on the right radial, going away. Bring up our flaps. I'm keeping the nose a little bit low to bring the airspeed up a bit. We're still climbing with very good performance. We're going at 2,300 feet per minute, so that's hardly bad. We'll check, make sure our gear is up. It is. We will hit altitude select and make sure it enunciates. It does. Okay, that green needle is Big Piney, which we will be turning towards momentarily. Now we're heading out towards Nelsey, and what we're going to do is we're going to request clearance to go direct to a bit of a shortcut. So first things first, I'm going to turn the autopilot on. And take care of a little business right here. So we're going to go direct to Big Piney, BPI. So there we go. And it is turning us, and it will ultimately turn us so that this green needle, which is pointing at Big Piney, will be right under our nose, give or take the wind correction. And we're coming up on 14. We're going to get 1,000 to go chime in 1 second. But you know what? We've already been cleared up to our final flight level, so there's that chime. And we will spin the magic wheel up to flight level 270. There we go. Make sure alt cell is still set. We'll go into IAS mode, and we will try to climb at about 175 with this kind of weight. That'll get us a decent rate of climb. Alright, so while I'm at it, we're above 10,000. Approach lights can come off. Logo lights can come off. Bleeds can go to normal. We're in smooth air. I'll turn the fasten seatbelt signs off.
Ladies and gentlemen, for your own safety, we instruct you to
Turn our auxiliaries and our pumps off. Turn auto feather off. Okay, we're at props at max climb, and that's cool. And we confirm we're flying right at Big Piney, which is good. And next altitude we're looking for is flight level 180, at which point we'll switch over to standard altimeter. We are trimmed nicely rudder-wise. This plane you have to retrim every single time you make even the slightest change in power. And we are cool there. Just spin our heading bug around. And at the moment we've got a teeny tiny little left cross tailwind there. Pushing us a little bit east of where we want to go. So 64 to Big Piney. And just really beautiful terrain. The weather, by the way, is courtesy of Active Sky Next, and we're going to set standard altimeter. There we go. And there we are. When we get to cruising altitude, we're going to do a little trick that is going to make this already fast plane fly a little bit faster. We have 76 passengers and about 1,500 pounds of cargo, but we really, in addition to taking them, we really want to haul some ass. So we've got a special ass hauling switch, which I'll show you in a minute. Making sure that our TCAS is set. It is. That's pointing back at Jackson Hole, which it is. And we're 10 miles out. We'll just keep that in there in case we have to make a sudden return, which I don't foresee, but let's just check our T's and P's. Green, 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 green. Okay, that's cool. Our liquids and our juice, all cool. Flaps are up. We are fat and happy up here. Let me quickly, while we're climbing, let me just make sure I've got outcell set. Okay, we're at 200 for 270. Let me just show you the approach into Eagle County Municipal. Again, it is pretty sporty, shall we say. I suspect it wasn't built for commercial airliners, and I suspect that if you aren't visual by about here, really probably in an airliner you have to go elsewhere, and that's for a pretty simple reason. Unless I'm grossly reading this chart wrong, the decision height is 8,900 feet, which happens to be a half a mile away from the runway, which wouldn't be a big problem, except, let me double check. No, I'm sorry. Missed approach point is here, Nepri, so that's 3.5 miles away, and that is at 8,900 feet. So that leaves 3.5 miles to go down 2,400 feet, when really 3.5 miles you at most like to go down 1,050 feet. So it's not meant for a 3-degree approach after that. It's more like 6 degrees, and that seems like too much. And a lot of the videos I've seen from cockpits flying in here are essentially visual from about here or here, and I can't really imagine what it would be like to fly either this dash or anything bigger on a 6-degree approach path. So I'm guessing the way it's done, and I haven't listened to ATC, and I, in fairness, haven't talked to pilots who've flown in and out of here, but I've read a few things, and the indication seems to be you get visual around here, and then, as you'll see, there's a road and a valley you can follow, and either you do a visual approach to 2.5, or you break off your instrument approach here at the missed approach point, and then you do a circling to land here, which in a large plane is fraught with peril because there's only so much turning radius room available. So any way you look at it, it's kind of funky. But as you'll see, what we're going to do is hope that the weather is cool here, because otherwise we're going to have to divert or do something grossly unsafe. So anyway, here we go. We're at 245 for 270. We're still climbing okay. There's no ice to speak of. The outside temp is not conducive to ice, because it's not really conducive to moisture this high up, so we're cool there. 44 from Big Piney. And in a second we'll sneak into extra special ass hauling mode. In essence, what we're going to do is, instead of, here, I'll show you, as we start to level off, I'll bring our props back to 850, which is where we'll normally cruise. See, max cruise enunciates, and the maximum power here is 62%. But what we're going to do is we're going to move the levers back to 900, And ordinarily, the computers would only let us do about 57% power, but if we hit the extra special button, which is this one right here, max cruise, when the props are in 900, it's going to let us, I think, do the 63%. So we'll go just a little touch faster than if the props were at 850. At least that's the theory, but it seems to work out that way. Okay, 1,000 to go. Confirm alt cell. Confirmed. Confirm we're on the right leg. Yes, our next turn is at Big Piney. Cool. Now, we are high enough that we probably will not run into our VNE, which is nice. It means basically we can put the engines right at this index point, which is what's called request, which is right where the levers are right now, which is basically the maximum other than emergencies, and we won't worry about overspeeding because the air is too thin. Okay, so altitude is captured, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to scooch the props ahead to 900. And you'll notice that right here, I didn't want to do that. Notice that right here, it enunciates max climb and 59% torque. And that's the most you can get with these things on the rating index right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit max cruise. Boom. And now it lets us do 64% torque. And you'll see, slowly at first, and I'm going to retrim a little bit, you'll see the assholery begin. Right now we're at a true airspeed of about 292, and when we're all done with this, we're probably going to be at about 360 something, or maybe a little bit less because there isn't much wind. And for a turboprop, that's pretty good. Ordinarily also, this plane can fly higher, but only if equipped with automatic oxygen systems, and most, if not all, Q400s, I'm not sure about all, but I know most, are not. They're equipped with oxygen bottles and such, and generally speaking, they fly at a max of flight level 250, but we're doing 270 because the later models are certificated for, I believe, up to 280, but we were flying eastish. So we will fly odd, because it's odd to fly east and you have to go west to get even, or something like that. I just made that up. You get even in the Old West. Well, there you go. Okay. So here's our VNE, and here we are creeping up on it, but I don't think we're going to hit it. And here is our true airspeed, and it's a lot. We're 24 from Big Piney, and what we can start to do is we can start to plan our descent. So, first thing we'll do is we'll check and see if there are any discontinuities between the cruise and the approach. There isn't, and there isn't a star, by the way, so there's just wait, you hear that sound? I'm speaking to the crew. I'm speaking to the passengers. And I've got an English accent, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we're not flying a star, we're only flying a transition, and that transition is this one right here. Just make sure we don't have a discontinuity before it. We don't. And so we can calculate an approach profile all the way through to our missed approach point. This is also going to be what our LNAV approach uses. So let's see where we want our first transition. We want it to be Kimball, which is at or above 14, so we'll do it to Kimball. Kimball is 5, and there we are. And we don't want any offset because we don't want to be at around 14,000 when the mountains could conceivably be higher than that. So let's do 0 offset, and that's a decent rate of descent. That usually works out to be about 3 degrees in this airplane, so that's cool. And we're set. Yep, 285. And top of descent is in 215 miles. So at some point I might just cut the tape and pick it up in a second. We're back. This is the Majestic -8 Q400 done up in American Eagle livery in honor of the late American Airlines Captain Michael Johnston, who died en route from Phoenix to Boston while captaining an Airbus 320. We're doing this sort of as a tribute because he used to fly the -8 for America West Airlines over much the same territory as this. So this is just by way of a little bit of a homage, or even an homage. And we're going to try and do the best we can with a pretty challenging approach into Vail, K-E-G-E. So let's pop inside. And as you can see, we are about 50 miles from top of descent. That is top of descent right there. And let me just spin our heading bug around. We're going to be coming into some significantly gnarly weather into Vail, but it should be good enough to break off the instrument approach a little bit early and fly visual to the field. So that's what we're hoping, at least. Before we start going down, let me just get the local weather there.
Kilo, Echo, Golf, Echo, airport information, Oscar 0415 Zulu, weather, wind 072, at 7, visibility 9, sky condition, ceiling 6,000, broken, ceiling 7,000, overcast, temperature 112.8, altimeter 3033, advise on initial contact, you have information, Oscar, Kilo, Echo, Golf, Echo, airport information, Oscar.
Okay, Oscar and 3033, we're putting that in our standby right now. We're right now at a flight level, so we're at standard altimeter. So for the moment, there you go. And we've got crap loads of fuel. We are hauling a large amount of ass. You can see there's our TOD, and there's where we basically turn onto the approach, which takes us through a mountain range or two. And I mean, as you can see, there's fog and other precipitation in the valleys, and we're probably going to pick up some icing, and we're probably going to see some sleet or snow coming at us. When and if we do hit the icing, we will turn on our boots, and that should take care of it. I'm just quickly making sure that my landing altitude is set. And it's set for 7, which is 500 above field. Actually, field is 6550, so let's make that 7. Well, to be on the safe side, we'll make it a little bit high. The point being that we don't want to be pressurized when we hit the ground, basically, for a whole bunch of reasons. Since we're coming up on our descent, we'll seat the passengers. Do a quick checklist. Electrics are fine. Bus tie is off. Ice protection as needed. Not needed yet. Heat's on. Landing lights off. Ignition stay on normal. Landing altitude set and checked. Bleeds normal. That's all fine. Quickly check our T's and P's. They're fine. quickly check our hydraulics and electrics. They're fine. Now, our first constraint is 14,000, so we'll set that. There we go. And in a second, when we get just a few miles closer to TOD, a vertical deviation indicator will light up, and then we can set VNAV for the descent mode, and it will attempt to capture it. I think we're too far away to arm the approach, but let's see if we are. Yes, we are. When we get closer, it will say arm approach, and then tune approach. It uses, on this particular approach, a VOR to help orient itself. We are still pointing back there at Rocky Springs, and we will for another 20 miles or so. This one happens to be a stray, but it is not really needed anyway. So just for the moment, so we don't distract ourselves, we'll just flip that off. I'm still squawking right. I'm on FMS, that's correct. My flight director is correct. My approach is going to be this one again, just as a reminder. And right about here actually, or even here, we're going to start looking for the airport, because as soon as we can, we're actually going to want to get visual with the field and then go lower, because the approach drops us off on a 6-degree glide path to the runway, which is untenable in this airplane and probably in most airplanes. Certainly most commercial airliners. So I think the way it works in real life here, and I say this advisedly because it's perfectly possible I got this totally wrong, most of the approaches that get done to runway 25 ultimately involve becoming visual very quickly, and I'm pretty certain that there's a lot of diverting done around here. But at some point, I suppose they'll build a fancy-ass RNP approach that will zig and zag and zag and zig and obviate the need for it. Right now, the terrain is too bad for a conventional ILS approach. They use a localizer LDA, offset, fancy, schmancy, singing, dancy sort of thing, which I would fly, except all I do is embarrass myself and my mother as well. And I don't think I could bomb through that, so we'll skip that. And for the moment, we'll fly the RNAV approach, and we will cross our fingers and hope we can break out of this crap over here in enough time to acquire the airport and descend onto a saner glide path. So there we go, we're alive here. Set VNAV, check that it's enunciated, check that our initial constraint is set, and it is. Excuse me, a little agua. We're almost certainly going to get hit with some icing when we get down to about there. And so we'll be ready and looking for that. It will enunciate here. And this aircraft, the Majestic Q400, actually responds accurately to icing. The simulation, the flight dynamics, the flight modeling of this plane are not done within the simulator, which is Lockheed Martin's Prepared, which is really just a fancy version of Flight Simulator. Instead, the flight modeling is done, the physics are done, basically, on a program called JSB Sim, which is an evolution of a NASA flight simulation program called Lark Sim. And basically what it does is it does all the flight dynamic calculations outside of the simulator, and then injects it back into the simulator, and really all the simulator is doing is displaying weather and scenery and so forth. So let's take a look at where we are. I'm going to expand our scale a little bit, some better situational awareness. You can see we're going almost 350 knots, true airspeed, which is plenty fast. And we are 6 miles from TOD. So again, we'll be looking for 18,000, at which point we will set 3033, and in real life we would call in to approach or be handed off to approach with information Oscar at the moment. And again, we'll be going down at about 1,800 feet per minute. And I'm just going to slow down a little bit in advance of it because it's very hard to slow this airplane down. Especially when it's going down, especially when there might be a little bit of ice on the surfaces. And look at that. Here comes our precip. Okay, it's acquired the VNAV path. And it's enunciated. And that's the right constraint. And it is on the path, and that's going to creep up to about 1.8. And in a second, this is going to tell me, hey buddy, I'm covered in ice, do something. So we'll do something. And at this point we can arm the approach and tune the approach, and that is done. And as you can see, we're getting rocked around a little bit. The clouds and the rain and all the rest are courtesy of a program called Active Sky Next, which looks on the internet for the real MEDAR or MEDAR or weather report and builds it and dumps it into the simulator, and the simulator throws it up on the screen. So as a sanity check, we are slightly below profile, but barely. We're coming down about as fast as we can. We're going down at our targeted rate of speed, and look, it says ice detected, so let's do this. Let's climb up to here. No, let's do that. Come up to here, turn on our boots, or if we were in Canada, we turn on our boots. Open these doors, and while we're up here, see that we are descending. Yes, we are. And on the off chance that we've got a significant amount of ice at the moment, I'm going to keep my speed up just a little bit. Again, we're looking for 18,000, at which point we will change our altimeter. We'll also calculate our V speeds. And we've got a calculator to do that. Now what I'm not going to do from experience is also set a switch in my anti-icing system that bumps up the V speeds, because I am almost dead certain that by the time we get close to landing altitude, that ice is going to be gone. But I'm going to leave the boots on, and if it's still illuminated, what I will do is, instead of flipping that switch, which also changes where the stick shaker is, I will just fly the approach 10 knots fast, which will do the same thing. since out of all the stupid things I've done in this plane, I've never almost stalled it. If it gets too hands-on to jump up there and flip that switch, I'll do that. But if I can, I'll flip it, because it's, the more I think about it, it's there for a reason. It's to save me from the first time I do that stupid thing. Alright, so we're turning towards our initial approach fix. And I'm going to let the airplane slow just a little bit. I'll spin the heading bug around. And we're getting a bit above our profile, so I will just bring our power back a little bit more. Give it a little bit of breathing room to nose us down a bit. See, notice the rate of descent is creeping up. There we go. So I'll get us back on there. This plane is not as automated as most. It does some things for you, but you have to, for instance, manage speed and power the whole way, which is kind of cool. It's kind of fine. It's certainly a lot more fun than just twiddling knobs, but, you know, you can't fly as far or as high or as fast. On the other hand, you can fly into some pretty challenging places like this. Okay, so we'll set our altimeter to 3034. 33, I'm sorry. And that's going to leave us considerably above profile, so we're going to come back to flight idle here and get ourselves back on path. And I've got a sneaking feeling we're going to be able to see the field. Now, also, because things are going to happen really fast, I'm going to do some of my arrival flows a little bit early. So I'm going to get my lights on, turn that on. I am going to, let's try that again, turn my standbys and pumps on as well. Make sure my flaps set 15, expecting 15. That's the flap warning system, not the flaps themselves. And I'm going to dial down, this is the constraint, which is our missed approach point. Because I know from experience the VNAV actually does fly the correct profile and you do hit the constraints okay, so that's fine. Our problem isn't going to be that. Our problem is going to be that the constraints it will fly us to will leave us significantly high. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, we just started our approach. We would kindly ask you to fasten your seatbelts again and turn off all your electronic equipment.
I'm going to try and slow us down to 200, and then I'll put in our first notch of flaps and we'll start slowing down a hell of a lot more. And this could get saucy. I don't want to do what those poor captain and first officer did on Colgan 3047, which is inadvertently get too slow with the autopilot on. So what I'm going to do right now is throw in a notch of flaps so we get a little more nose down, and we're right about flaps max right here. So let me just try to keep it below 200. And we're about to turn onto our final approach. And as soon as we do, I'm going to drop the gear because I want to get really draggy. So the approach is activated. This is where it always loads the scenery. Spin our heading bug around. Come down a little bit more on the power, throw the gear out. Uh-oh. Alright, that's about right. I'm also going to set a reduced noise profile landing. Prop levers come to max. Bleeds go to min. Taxi lights come on, and we are ready to go. And we're going to be looking for 117, and our V climb is actually going to be 138 if we have to go missed. Alright, in come the next 2 notches of flaps. And I'm going to get as slow as I can because we're going to start going down.
2,500.
Okay. I've got contact with the ground, but I don't see the pappies yet. Barely have contact with the ground. Alright, so let's take this. And we can descend to 8,900. Because I can see the ground now. Just barely. There we go. Okay, 1,000 above. And we are now 2 miles from the runway, so okay, I'm following this road here to the left. Okay, there's the pappies, right at about 12:30 o'clock. They're white over white though, so luckily, you see how much speed we've bled off? So we now have room to go down. Retrim. Okay, we're right at V approach, or V ref. And there is the runway, and now there we go, we're on profile. Hold our speed, lose that.
500.
Come back up. There we go. And we are landing. Look at that.
Plus 100. Minimums. Minimums.
Yes, landing.
100. $50, $40, $30, $20, $10.
27 feet per minute. And almost on the center line, too. We'll take the turn off after this one. There we go. And we'll take the long taxi back. You hear the props going in and out of beta there? That's another thing that the Majestic does really, really well, which is simulate all the different phases of turboprop operation. Beta and reverse and everything works as it should. So does the torque and the propeller effects that tend to shove the airplane to the left, and all the rest of that is nicely modeled. So while we're here, we can turn that off, we can raise our flaps, we can turn off our pumps and our standbys. There we go. We can sneak up here and turn off our landing lights and turn off our heats. And wait for all the warning lights to come on. While we're doing that, we can turn on our APU. Try not to run off the taxiway while we're doing it. Turn off our yaw damper. Turn our gust lock on. Kill that caution. Turn on our gin and turn on our bleeds. Start looking for a parking space. We'll go in at the next ramp. The next entry. Sorry about that. My apologies to the ramp. There we go. And we'll park next to that United, or maybe it's Continental, -8. believe that's gate 6. I remember it well. In we go. Let's turn off our taxi lights so we don't blind anybody. Little common courtesy goes a long way, I guess. And we're going to creep up on that mark that says there we go. Okay, steering lock can go back on for the next time. Parking brake can come on. Flaps are up. Condition levers can come, both of them to start feather, and they have to be there for 30 seconds to cool down. And there we go. Power levers are on disc. Bleed air is on. Our engine bleeds can come off. That can go back to normal. Recirc can stay on. Turn off our anti-ice. Turn off our windshield heat. Lights come off. Fasten seatbelt sign comes off. Bim, bam, boom. Okay, we can pop outside. And we will kill number 1 first. Wow, look at that. Can I eyeball it or what? All right, let everybody go. Shut down number 2. And we can call it a flight. Anyway, it was a pleasure doing this, pleasure having you on board, and I think I'll fly a few more flights as American Eagle because it's a pretty cool livery. Although I'm still a sucker for the old American Airlines one, but, you know, those days are gone. Anyway, thanks for watching. You know the drill. If you like it, say you liked it. If you didn't, say you didn't. If you like it a lot, subscribe. Our next trip is probably going to be to West Yellowstone. It might be all the way to Reading. So either way, look forward to seeing you again, and have a good rest of the week.